Hello, darlings. Welcome back to the Gentleman Psychic. You know, I have to do the medias of social because I normally would have done a live preview and it would have been great, but I did not get a chance to do that because I was on Greg Koss's show just a moment ago. Where am I? Oh, yes, here we go. I have to go over to the YouTubes and figure out where I am. Oh, you know what? I think I should be able to. Oh, I don't remember. I know I always do this because technology. Hello, Demon King, Damon Knight. It is good to see you, my friend. I hope your seance went all right. Where am I? I don't know where I am. Your channel. Let's see. Your videos. No, let's see. Live. Why can't I don't know. I don't know where it is. Anyway, hello. Oh, hi, Willie. Good to see you, my friend. Hello, hello. Um, I was trying to figure out so I could share this on the Book of Faces because anyway, I'm very old. I'm so old-fashioned. I just don't understand this modern technology, and they keep changing it. Your channel. Wait. Haha. Here we go. Now I see it. Uh, share. We'll go there. And we'll hit share again. Copy the link, and we'll go over here to the Book of Faces. And we'll switch to this one, and we'll go here. Okay. Good evening, Mary Jane. Good to see you. Need help with the Ouija board stuff, says Demon King. Well, let me know. Message me on the Book of Faces. Monferno, greetings. Love the dark blue tie. Thank you. Actually, I'll tell you a little story. Hello, just watching your interview with Greg Koss. Enjoyed it. Thank you, Linda. Switched over from Greg's show. Welcome, Ghost Head Soup. Hello, Dean. So I tell this joke when people compliment something that I'm wearing. I typically will say, "Thank you, it was my father's. He was buried with it." And then we laugh and they go, "But how can it be your father's if he was buried in it? How did you get it back?" And then I tell them, "Well, he gave it to me." Anyway, so that's what the joke is. However, I will say that this was my late father's tie, and it brings back bittersweet memories because you can't really tell, but it has these little crowns on it. And so my father had this tie for probably, goodness, years. It was hit. My grandmother had put an ad in the paper that she was making quilt ties. And so she was asking for donations of old ties. And this was one of them. And so my father had it and he wore it on occasion. And then I loved it. I just really loved it. And so he gave it then to my brother-in-law, who also passed away. And somehow in all of that, it came back to me. And so this was my father's tie, and it was my brother-in-law's, it was my grandmother's, and it has little crowns on it. And my mother gave me a little brooch with a crown, and I have it upstairs. It's not really my style because it's just a safety pin with a crown that dangles from it. But my mother always thought of me and crowns. So it is very nice to have this, have a comment on the tie. You have so many suits. I don't even know how many suits I have. I have a lot of suits. Um, have have profile photo of Opera House. That's a nice tie. It's very nice. Thank you. Um, things imbued with love tend to come back. That is true. That is very true. And blue is one of my colors, though I have the weird goth in me wants to not admit it, but I also really love pink. And my mother, when I came out as gay, said, "Oh, I should never have let you wear pink." But we're not here to talk about that. I should introduce myself for those of you who are new. My first name is Richard-Lael. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I'd be a dick. Anyway, thank you for coming to Storytime. This is where we, for about an hour, we read classic stories that have one thing in common, and it is the devil. We are currently reading our way through this classic novel here, Speak of the Devil. And the reason that I actually wanted to show you the book cover is because I never get tired of seeing it. It was designed by the incomparable Salvador Dali. Anyway, so that is what we are reading tonight. And I hope that you have relaxed. I hope that you have a blanket or a fan. And I hope that you have gone over and picked your poison. I have my poison right here. Mine is strychnine. Mmm, so delicious and smooth. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boils and ghouls, our friends who are non-binary, guys and gals and non-binary pals, I think is the way that it is. Sam Zog, Linda Judd, Shrouded Grove. Hello, hello. Without further ado, I give to you the very reason that you are here is story time. John Maxwell, hello. We move now to Italy. Possibly because the papacy had an early toehold on the Italian boot, the devil has been particularly active in the ancient pagan regions from the Brenner Pass to Scilia and Charybdis. If Satan was not actually reincarnated in the bourgeois and the Medici, he could at least count them among his most devout disciples. And there are those who believe that Niccolo Machiavelli served Satan as Moses once served Yahweh, as talented personal secretary. However that may be, Machiavelli realized that the devil himself was not a match for a beautiful and evil woman of the sort to be found in the Renaissance Italy. Drawing upon a medieval Latin source, both Giovanni Brevo and the author of The Prince wrote tales of a minor devil who took an earthly wife and finally left her to return to the comforts of hell. As satire, this story appealed to later French and German writers, echoing plaintively down the years until Ben Jonson revived the theme in The Devil is an Ass. More virtuous by far than Machiavelli's scheming female was the married woman of unimpeachable morality, who was wooed for years by the incubus who haunted Pavia, if we are to trust that word of the Reverend Father Sinistari of Armeno, who was among the congenesti of the incubi and succubi. The lecherous demon sought in every conceivable way to share the bed of Herminia, who lived in the parish of St. Michael. Having first tempted her with a large cake of peculiar shape, he was soon whispering sweet nothings in her ear. Appearing as a little man of great beauty, with golden locks, a flaxen beard that shone like gold, sea green eyes, calling to mind a flax flower, and arrayed in a fancy Spanish dress. Calling Jesus and Mary, this virtuous woman sought to help the exorcist priest and relics in support of her virtue. But for many years, the demon came to her bedroom or connived to waylay her. This lovesick, weeping, and moaning incubus, incensed at her disdain, had recourse to new kinds of precaution, prolonging her rings and holy relics, and even snatching her child from her bosom. He kept his consumpsient conniving by stripping the voluptuous young matron on the steps of the church at 10 in the morning, when a crowd of people were gathering for mass. Her clothes and ornaments fell off to the ground and disappeared in a gust of wind, leaving her stark naked. Had it not been for two cavaliers of mature age who divested themselves of their cloaks to conceal the woman's nudity, few would have attended Mass that morning. Herminia's infuriating purity at last confounded the evil one, but the similar purity of Beatrice led Dante to write Hell's most famous uh, Baedeker, proving that virginity can be put to a number of unsuspected uses. A casual commenter might imagine that Dante Alighieri pictured the deepest hell as one of the desolate fog and ice in commemoration of the tortures of chastity. His icy inferno, however, was not without tradition and precedent. Actually, he was drawing upon ancient Teutonic sources, as all who have perused Saxo Grammaticus, Cadmion, and the others can testify. His demon, Dis, with its three faces, it's strikingly similar to the evil deity of the north known to the Celts as Teutons. The comedy of Dante Alighieri, a Florentine by birth but not in character, acquired as centuries passed a shorter title, Divina Commedia, an expression of the high regard in which the great allegory was held by generations of readers. To modern ears, and particularly in translation, the Divine Comedy often seems shrill and needlessly cantankerous. Those who can read it in the original, however, testify to its extreme beauty of phrase. Dante's reasons for political satire and his castigation of the inhabitants of the Arno Valley go back to the struggles between Guelphus and Ghibellians and subsequent feuding clans. Although Dante was a Gulev, his sympathies were divided in the struggle between black and white, and his attempts to keep the peace drew their usual reward. Exile did not improve his temper. But that some good may come out of evil is proved by this poet's picture of hell and hell on earth, and the gangsters of the Arno Valley are immortal, if only in ridicule. Our thanks to Beatrice and the feuding politics of Florence. Canto 34 from the Divine Comedy. Dante Alighieri. The Judaica, or last circlet of coitus, takes its name from Judas Iscariot and contains the souls of those who betrayed their masters and benefactors. The arch-traitor, Satan, emperor of the realm of sorrow, stands fixed in the center of it, and he too is punished by his own sin. All the streams of the guilt keep flowing back to him as their source, and from beneath his three faces, shadows of his consciousness, issue forth the mighty wings which he struggles, as it were, to raise himself, and sends out winds that freeze him only the more firmly in his ever-swelling marsh. Dante has to take a full view of him too, and then is carried through the center by this mystic guide, grappling on the hair of Satan, not without significance, and set down on the other face of Judaica. And now the bitter journey of our pilgrim is over, and a tone of gladness goes through the remaining verses. Hell is now behind him, and the stars of heaven above. He has got beyond the everlasting no, and is sore travailed, and the way is long and difficult, but it leads from darkness to the bright world. After some brief inquiries, without caring for any repose, by aid of the heaven-sent wisdom, he plucks himself from the abyss and follows, climbing till they see the stars in the opposite hemisphere. Vexilia regis produnit inferni towards us, therefore took in front of thee, my master said, if thou disconcernest him, as when a thick mist breathes, or when the night comes on our hemisphere, a mill which the wind turns appears to at distance. Such an edifice did I know now seem to see, and for the wind shrunk back behind my girdle, because no other shed was there. Already I had come, and with fear I put into verse, where the souls were wholly covered and shone through like straw and glass. Some are lying, some stand upright, this on its head and that upon its soles. Another, like a bow, bends face to feet. When we had proceeded in so far that it pleased my guide to show to me the creature which was once so fair, he took himself from before me and made me stop, saying, Lo dis, and lo the place where it behooves thee, arm thyself with fortitude. How icy chill and hoarse I then became. Ask not, O reader, for I write it not, because all speech would fail to tell. I did not die, and did not remain alive. Now think for thyself, if thou hast any grain of ingenuity, what I became, deprived of both death and life, the emperor of the dolorous realm. From mid-breast stood forth out of the ice, and I in size am like to a giant, than the giants are to his arms. Mark now how great that a whole must be, for which corresponds to such a part. If he was once as beautiful as he is ugly now, and lifted up his brows against his Maker, well, may all affliction come from him. Oh, how great a marvel seemed to me when I saw three faces on his head, the one in front, and it was fiery red, and others were two. They were adjoined to this above the very middle of each shoulder, and they were joined at his crest. And the right seemed between white and yellow, the left as such took on as they who come from the Nile descends. Under each there issued forth two mighty wings of size befitting such a bird. Sea sails I never saw so broad. No plumes had they, but were in form and texture like a bat's, and he was flapping them, so that the three winds went forth from him. Thereby Coctuus was all frozen. With his 6 eyes he wept, and down 3 chins gushed tears and bloody foam. In every mouth he champed a sinner with his teeth like a brake, so that he thus kept 3 of them in torment. To the one in front the biting was not compared with the tearing, for at times the back of him remained quite stripped of skin. That soul up there which suffers greatest punishment, said the master, is Judas Iscariot, he who has head within and outside piles his legs. Of the other 2, who have their heads beneath that, from one who hangs the black visage, is Brutus. See how he writhes himself and utters not a word. And the other is Cassius, who seems so stark of limb, but night is rescending, and now must we depart, for we have seen the whole. As he desired, I clasped his neck, and he took opportunity and time and place, and when the wings were open far, applied him to the shaggy sides, and then from the shag to shag it descended down between the tangled hair and frozen crusts. When we had come to where the thigh revolves, just on the swelling of the haunch, my guide, with labor and with difficulty, turned his head where he had his feet before, and grappled on the hair as one who mounts, so that I thought we were returning into hell again. Hold thee fast, for by such stairs, said my guide, panting like a man forespent, must we depart from so much ill. Thereafter, through the opening of a rock, he issued forth and put me on its brim to sit. Then towards me he stretched his weary step. I raised my eyes and thought to see Lucifer as I had left him, and saw him with the legs turned upwards. And the gross people, who see not what that point is which I had passed, let them judge if I grew perplexed then. Rise up, said the master, upon thy feet. The way is long and difficult, the road, and already to middle tierce the sun returns. It was no palace hall, there where we stood, but natural dungeon with an evil floor and want of light. Before I pluck myself from the abyss, said I, when risen up, O master, speak to me a little to draw me out of the error. Where is the ice? And this is how is he fixed thus upside down? And how, in so short a time, has the sun from eve to morn made transit? And he to me, thou imaginest that thou art still upon the other side of the centre, where I caught hold on the head of the evil worm which pierces through the world. Thou wast on the side, so long as I descended. When I turned myself, thou then didn't pass the point to which all the gravities from every part are drawn. And now thou art arrived beneath the hemisphere, opposed that which canopies the great dry land. The underneath whose summit was consumed, the man who without sin was born and lived, thou hast thy feet upon little sphere, which forms the other face of Judeca. Here it is morn, where it is at evening there, and this fiend who made a ladder for us with his hair is still fixed as he was before. On this side fell he down from heaven, and the land, which erst stood out here, through fear of him, veiled itself with sea, and came to our hemisphere, and perhaps in order to escape from him, that which on this side appears, left here the empty space, and upwards rushed down there from Beelzebub, as far removed as the tomb extends, in a space not known by the sight but by sound, of a rivulet descending in it, along the hollow of a rock which it has eaten out with tortuous course and slow declivity. The guide and I entered by that hidden road to return into the bright world, and without caring for any rest. We mounted up, he first and I second, so far that I distinguished through a round opening the beauteous things which heaven bears, and thence we issued out again to see the stars. And now we go to Germany, Deutschland. Sprechen Sie Deutsch? I don't know. It is indeed curious that a nation which was never thoroughly converted to Christianity should be so deeply steeped in diabolism, but the German genius for poetry and sadism seems to have found its perfect outlet in the cults of Satan. Bridges and cathedrals built by the devil, if legend can be believed, abound in the Reich. The works of such devil lorists as Wilhelm Hauff and E. Tha A. Devil Hoffmann have been enormously popular, and of course the Faust legend from Goethe to the Sprenger's Faustian man. It is the very pivot of German literature, meeting special attention elsewhere in this volume. Curious parallels between their orgastic excess of the Nazis and the ancient Germanic celebrations have been drawn by a number of historians and thoughtful correspondents. They range from violations of the rules of war to gross homosexuality. Those who believe that the Inquisition reached its full flowering in Spain under Torquemada should read the records of torture on the rack, the wheel, and the Iron Virgin in Nuremberg, Augsburg, and elsewhere in gentle Germany. Camp commanders at Dachau and Orenburg were amateurs compared to the Christian fathers who, with whips, spikes, burning sulphur, burning brandy, weights, vices, and other instruments of hell, tortured a pregnant woman in the year 1631, as related to Königs Augustenberg de Menschwans. Actually, no fictional presentation of the devil is necessary in a nation which has produced Frederick, Wilhelm II, Hitler, and Himmler, Those who would know more about the German devil might ask the Poles, the Czechs, the Norwegians, the French, the Dutch, the Belgians, the gays, and the Jews. By contrast, the Reformation once promised a Christianized and moral Germany. Martin Luther was one German who hated the devil and all his works, and Luther's table talk, as proved by the following excerpts, should rival any holy relic as a specific for exorcising the pan-German devil. Of the Devil and His Works by Reverend Martin Luther. No malady comes upon us from God, who is good and wishes us well. They all emanate from the devil, who is the cause and author of plagues, fevers, etc. When he is at work with jurisconsults, he engenders all sorts of dissensions and machinations, turning justice into injustice. Approaches he great lords, princes, kings. He gives birth to wars and massacres. Gains he access to the divine. He produces the worst mischief of all, false doctrines, which seduce and ruin men's souls. God alone can check so many calamities. The devil vexes and harasses the workmen in the mines, and makes them think they have found fine new veins of silver, which, when they have labored, turn out to be mere illusion. Even in open day, on the surface of the earth, he causes people to think they see a treasure before them, which vanishes when they would pick it up. When I was young, someone told me this story. Satan had, in vain, set all his craft and subtlety at work to separate a married pair that lived together in perfect harmony and in love. At last, having concealed a razor under each of their pillows, he visited the husband, disguised as an old woman, and told him that his wife had formed the project of killing him. He next told the same thing to the wife. The husband, finding the razor under his wife's pillow, became furious with anger at her supposed wickedness and cut her throat. So powerful is Satan in his malice. A pastor near Torgau came to Luther and complained that the devil tormented him without intermission. The doctor replied, "He plagues and harasses me too, but I resist him with the arms of faith. I know of one person at Magdeburg who put Satan to the rout by spitting at him. But this example is not to be lightly followed, for the devil is presumptuous spirit and not disposed to yield. We run great risk when, with him, we attempt more than we can do. One man who relied implicitly on his baptism when the devil presented himself to him, his head furnished with horns, tore off one of his horns, but another man, of less faith, who attempted the same thing, was killed by the devil. When I could not be rid of the devil with sentences out of the Holy Scripture, I made him often fly with jeering words. Sometimes I said unto him, Saint Satan, if Christ's blood, which was shed for my sins, be not sufficient, then I desire that thou wouldst pray to God for me. When he finds me idle, with nothing in hand, he is very busy, and before I am aware, he wrings from me a bitter sweat. But when I offer him the pointed spear, God's word, he flies, yet before he goes, makes a grievous hurricane. There was a citizen whose child died, for whom he refused to have vigils and masses sung. The devil played his freaks, came every night about 12 o'clock into the chamber where the boy died, and made a whining like a young child. Oh, the good citizen, being therewith full of sorrow, knew not what course to take. I wrote to him from Wittenberg, and advised him not to suffer any vigils at all to be held, for he might be fully assured that these were merely pranks of the devil. Whereupon the children and servants in the house jeered at the spirit. Get thee gone to the place where thou oughtst be, to the pit of hell. When the devil marked their contempt, he left off his game and came there no more. He is a proud spirit, and cannot endure scorn. At Muhleburg, in Thuringia, not far from Efrate, there was a musician who gained his living by playing at merry-makings. This man came to the minister of the parish and complained that he was every day assailed by the devil, who threatened to carry him off because he had played at an unlawful marriage. The minister consoled him, prayed for him, recited to him numerous passages of Scripture directed against the devil, and, with some other pious men, watched over the unfortunate man day and night, fastening the doors and windows so that he might not be carried off. At length the musician said, I feel that Satan cannot harm my soul, but he will assuredly remove my body. And that very night, at 8 o'clock, though the watch was doubled, the devil came in the shape of a furious wind, broke the windows, and carried off the musician, whose body was found the next morning, stiff and black and stuck on a tree. A day in Nuremberg. B.E. Koenig. The hangman bound the woman who was pregnant and placed her on the rack. Then he racked her till the heart would fain break, but had no compassion. When she did not confess, the torture was repeated. The hangman tied her hands, cut off her hair, poured brandy over her head, and burned it. He placed sulphur in her armpits and burned it. Her hands were tied behind her, and she was hauled up to the ceiling and suddenly dropped down. This hauling up and dropping down was repeated for some hours, until the hangman and his helpers went for dinner. When they returned, the master hangman tied her feet and hands upon her back, brandy was poured on her back and burned, then heavy weights were placed on her back, and she was pulled up. After this, she was again stretched on the rack. A spiked board was placed on her back, and she was again hauled up to the ceiling. The master again tied her feet, hung on them on a block of 50 pounds, which made her think that her heart would burst. This proved insufficient. Therefore, the master untied her feet and fixed her legs in a vice, tightening the jaws until the blood oozed out over the toes. Nor was this sufficient. Therefore, she was stretched and pinched again in various ways. Now the hangman of Dreisgacher began the third-grade torture. When he placed her on the bench and put the shirt on her, he said, I do not take you for 1, 2, 3, not for 8 days, nor for a few weeks, but for half a year, or your whole life until you confess. And if you will not confess, I shall torture you to death, and you shall be burned after all. The hangman's son-in-law hauled her up to the ceiling by her hands. The hangman of Dreisgacher whipped her with a horsewhip. She was placed in a vice where she remained for 6 hours. After that, she was again mercilessly horsewhipped. This was all that was done on the first day. Swedish. For the most part, we saw him in grey coat and the red and blue stockings, and he had a red beard, a high-crowned hat with linen of divers colours wrapped up about it, and long garters upon his stockings. Such was the picture of the devil painted by the children of the village of Mora in Sweden, 1669, when the king's commissioners were sent to investigate a report of rampant witchcraft. It is a strange tale, as reported by Joseph Glanville, in his 18th century volume on witches and apparitions, a tale told by an idiot. The legend of the pie-eyed piper with a page dipped in blood. We learn that the confessions of all of the children eventually agreed, except some very little ones who could not tell all the circumstances of their traffic with the devil. We find that 23 of the villagers were found guilty and condemned to death, and that many of the others were exiled. 15 children were executed, 36 were forced to run the gauntlet, and then were lashed once a week for a year, while 20 children were lashed with rods upon their hands for 3 Sundays together at the church door. If any further proof were needed of the devil's entrenchment in Sweden, reference might be made to a fairly common Scandinavian folk tale in which the devil, in the role of Charon, bargains with a fisherman to transport a boatload of souls to an island off the coast. The circumstances of the very tale vary slightly, but the fisherman always notices that the weight of the arriving souls gradually brings his gunwales awash, although he can see nothing in his craft, and that his boat rises to its normal level after he has reached the island shore. Selma Lagerlof's ghost story, which has been taken complete form, the story of Ghosta Berling, speaks for itself as an atmospheric old wives' tale. It is worth noting, perhaps, that the devil returns from his nightly trips with black bulls hitched to his carriage, since in Tennessee the legend persists into our own time that the devil hitches black oxen to his cart. Today, we assume that the Swedish devil is an isolationist, a power in the steel trust, righteously indignant at the success of the cooperatives. Satan waxes fatter where there is friction. Ghost story. Selma Lagerlof. O children of the present day, I have nothing new to tell you, only that is old and almost forgotten. I have legends from the nursery, where the little ones sat on low stools about the old nurse with her white hair, or from the log fire in the cottage where the laborers sat and chatted, while the steam reeked from their wet clothes, and they drew knives from leather sheaths at their necks to spread the butter on thick, soft bread, or from the hall where old men sat on Hercules Dillner, for the child's head was filled with the people of those old days. It lived for and adored them. But if such a child, whose whole soul was filled with stories, should be sent through the dark attic to the storeroom for flax or biscuits, then the small feet scurried, then it came flying down the stairs, through the passage to the kitchen. For up there in the dark, it could not help thinking of the wicked mill owner at Forst, of him who was in league with the devil. Sintram's ashes have been resting long in Svartsetso. I can't pronounce that word. Churchyard, but no one believes that his soul has been called to God, as it reads on his tombstone. While he was alive, he was one of those to whose home, on long rainy Sunday afternoons, a heavy coach, drawn by black horses, used to come. A gentleman, richly but plainly dressed, gets out of the carriage and helps with cards and dice to while away the long hours which, with their monotony, have driven the master of the house to despair. The game is carried on far into the night, and when the stranger departs at dawn, he always leaves behind some baleful parting gift. As long as Sintram was here on earth, he was one of those whose coming is made known by spirits. They are heralded by visions. Their carriages roll into the yard. Their whip cracks, their voices sound on the stairs. The door of the entry is opened and shut. The dogs, the people are awakened by the noise. It is so loud, but there is no one who has come. It is only a hallucination which goes before them. Ugh, those horrible people, whom evil spirits seek out. What kind of big black dog was it that which showed itself at Fours in Sintram's time? He had terrible shining eyes, and a long tongue which dripped blood, and hung far out of his panting throat. One day, when the men servants had been in the kitchen and eaten their dinner, he had scratched at the door, and all the maids had screamed with fright. But his biggest and strongest of the men had taken a burning log from the fire, thrown open the door, and hurled it into the dog's gaping mouth. Then he had fled with terrible howls, flames, and smoke, and burst from his throat. Sparks whirled about him, and his footprints on the path shone like fire. And was it not dreadful that every time Sintram came home from a journey, he had changed the animals which drew him? He left with horses, but when he came home at night, he had always black bulls before his carriage. The people who lived near the road saw their great black horses against the sky when he drove by, and heard the creatures bellowing, and were terrified by the line of sparks which the hooves and wheels drew out of the dry gravel. Yes, the little feet needed to hurry, indeed, to come across the big dark attic. Think if something awful, if he whose name one may not say should come out of the dark corner. Who can be sure? It was not only to wicked people that he showed himself. Had not Ulkera Dillner seen him? Both she and Anna Skarkanik should say that they have seen him. Friends, children, you who dance, you who laugh, I beg you so earnestly to dance carefully, laugh gently. For there can be so much unhappiness if your thin slippers tread on sensitive hearts instead of on hard boards. And your glad silvery laughter can drive a soul to despair. It was surely so the young people had trodden too hard on old Ulkera Dillner, and the young people's laughter had rung too arrogantly in her ears. For there came over her suddenly an irresistible longing for a married woman's titles and dignities. At last, she said yes to the evil Sinstram's long courtship, followed him to Forest as his wife, and was parted from the old friends at Berga, the dear old work, and the old cares for daily bread. It was a match which went quickly and gaily. Sinstram offered himself as Christmas, and in February they were married. That year, Anna St. Jarnohook was living in Captain Olga's home. She was a good substitute for old Elkira, and the latter could draw back without compunction and take to herself married honors. Without compunction, but not without regret. It was not a pleasant place she had to come to. The big empty rooms were filled with dreadful terrors. As soon as it was dark, she began to tremble and to be afraid. She almost died of homesickness. The long Sunday afternoons were the hardest of all. They never came to an end, neither they nor the long succession of torturing thoughts which traveled through her brain. So it happened one day in March, when Sintram had not come home from church to dinner, that she went into the drawing room on the second floor and placed herself at the piano. It was her last consolation. The old piano, with a flute player and shepherdess painted on the white cover, was her own. Come to her from her parents' home, to it she could tell her troubles. It understood her. But it is not both pitiful and is it not both pitiful and ridiculous? Do you know what she is playing? Only a polka, and she who is so heartbroken. She does not know anything else. Before her fingers stiffen, round broom and carving knife, she had learned this one polka. It sticks in her fingers, but she does not know any other piece. No funeral march, no impassioned sonata, not even a wailing ballad, only the polka. She plays it whenever she has anything to confide into the old piano. She plays it both when she feels like weeping and like smiling. When she was married, she played it, and when for the first time, she had to come to her own home, and also now. The old strings understand her. She is unhappy, unhappy. A traveler passing by and hearing the polka ring could well believe that Sintram was having a ball for the neighbors and friends. It sounded so gay. It is such a brave and glad melody with it. In the old days, she has played carelessness in the hunger out of Berga. When they heard it, everyone must up and dance. It burst the fetters of rheumatism about the joints and lured pensioners of 80 years onto the floor. The whole world would gladly dance to that polka. It sounds so gay. But old Ilkira weeps. Sintram has sulky, morose servants about him, and savage animals. She longs for friendly faces and smiling mouths. It is this despairing longing which the lively polka shall interpret. People find it hard to remember that she is Madame Sintram. Everybody calls her Mademoiselle Dilner. She wants the polka tune to express her sorrow for the vanity which tempted her to seek for married honors. Old Olkira plays as if she would break the strings. There is so much to drown. The lamentations of the poor peasants, and the curses overworked cottagers, the sneers of the insolent servants, and first and last the shame. Oh, the shame of being the wife of a bad man. To those notes, Gosta Berling has led young Countess Donna to the dance. Marianne Sinclair and her many admirers have danced to them, and the major's wife at Ekeby has moved to their measure when Altringer was still alive. She can see them, couple after couple, in their youth and beauty, whirl by. There was a stream of gaiety from her to them. It was her polka which made their cheeks glow, their eyes to shine. She is parted from all that now. Let the polka resound. So many memories, so many tender memories to drown. She plays to deaden her anguish. Her heart is ready to burst with terror when she sees the black dog. When she hears the servants whispering of the black bulls, she plays the polka over and over again to deaden her anguish. Then she perceives that her husband has come home. She hears that he comes into the room and sits down in the rocking chair. She knows so well the sound as the rockers creak on the deal floor that she does not even look around. All the time she is playing, the rocking continues. She soon hears the music no longer, only the rocking. Poor old Okira. So tortured, so lonely, so helpless, astray in a hostile country, without a friend to complain to, without any consoler but a cracked old piano, which answers her with a polka. It is like a loud laughter at a funeral, a drinking song in a church. While the rocking chair is still rocking, she hears suddenly how the piano is laughing at her sorrows, and she stops in the middle of a bar. She rises and turns to the rocking chair. But the next instant, she is lying in a swoon on the floor. It was not her husband who sat in that rocking chair. No, it was another. He to whom little children do not dare to give a name. He who would frighten them to death if they should meet him in the deserted attic. Can anyone whose soul has been filled with legends ever free himself from their dominion? The night wind howls outside. The trees whip the pillars of the balcony and their stiff branches. The sky arches darkly over their far stretching hills, and I, who sit alone in the night and write with a lamp lighted in the curtain drawn, I, who am old and ought to be sensible, feel the same shudder creeping up my back as when I first heard this story. And I have to keep lifting my eyes from my work to be certain that no one has come in and hidden himself in that further corner. I have to look out on the balcony to see if there is not a black head looking over the railing. This fright never leaves me when the night is dark and solitude deep, and it becomes at last so dreadful that I must throw aside my pen, creep down in my bed, and draw the blanket up over my eyes. It was the great secret wonder of my childhood that Ulcera Dilner survived that afternoon. I should never have done so. I hope, dear friends, that you may never have to see tears of old eyes, and that you may not have to stand helpless when the gray head leans against your breast for support, or when old hands are clasped about yours in silent prayer. May you never see the old sunk in a sorrow which you cannot comfort. What is the grief of the young? They have strength, they have the hope, but what suffering it is when the old weep, what despair when they have always been the support of our young days, sink into helpless wailing. There sat Anna Sanzjarnak, and listened to old Ulcera, and she saw no way out for her. The old woman wept and trembled. Her eyes were wild. She talked, and sometimes quite incoherently, as if she did not know where she was. The thousand wrinkles which crossed her face were twice as deep as usual. The false curls which hung down over her eyes were straightened by her tears, and her whole long, thin body was shaken with sobs. At last, Anna had put an end to the wailings. She had made up her mind. She was going to take her back to her burga. Of course, she was Sintram's wife, but she could not remain at Force. He would drive her mad if she stayed with him. Anna St. Jorik had decided to take old Ulcera away. Ah, how the poor thing rejoiced, and yet trembled at this decision. But she never would dare to leave her husband and her home. He would perhaps send the big black dog after her, but Anna St. Jornik conquered her resistance partly by jests, partly by threats, and in half an hour she had her beside her in the sledge, Anna. Anna was driving herself, and the old Disa was in the shafts, and the road was watched, for it was late in March. But it did old Erkera good to drive once more in the well-known sledge behind the old horse, who had been a faithful servant at Berga almost as long as she. As she had naturally cheerful spirit, she stopped crying by the time they passed Aristop at Horgsborg. She was already laughing, and when they passed Munkby, she was telling how it used to be in her youth, when she lived with the Countess at Skangholm. They drove up deep and stony road in a lonely and deserted region north of Munkenby. The road sought out all the hills it possibly could find. It crept up their tops by slow windings, rushed down them in deep descent, hurried across the even valley to find a new hill to climb over. They were just driving down to Vostrop's hill when old Ursula stopped short in what she was saying and seized Anna by the arm. She was staring at the big black dog at the roadside. "Oh, look," she said. The dog set off into the wood. Anna did not see much of him. "Drive on," said Altkira. "Drive as fast as you can. Now Sintram will hear that I have gone." Anna tried to laugh at her terror, but she insisted. We shall soon hear his sleigh bells. You will see, we shall hear them before we reach the top of the next hill." And when Disa drew breath for a second at the top of Elliot's Hill, sleigh bells could be heard behind them. Old Okura became quite mad with fright. She trembled, sobbed, and wailed, and she had done in drawing room at force. Anna tried to urge Disa on, but she only turned her head and gave her a glance of unspeakable surprise. Did she think that Disa had forgotten when it was time to trot and when it was time to walk? Did she want to teach her how to drag a sledge, to teach her who was known every stone, every bridge, every gate, every hill, for more than 20 years? All this while the sleigh bells were coming nearer. It is he, it is he, I know his bells, wails old Okira. The sound comes ever nearer. Sometimes it seems so unnaturally loud that Anna turns to see if Sinstrom's horse has not gotten his head in her sledge. Sometimes it dies away. They hear it now on the right, now on the left of the road, but they see no one. It is as if the jingling of the bells alone pursues them. Just as it is at night, on the way home from a party, it also is now. These bells ring out a tune. They sing, speak, answer. The woods echo with their sound. Anna St. Jorok almost wishes that their pursuer would come near enough for her to see Sintram himself and his red horse. The dreadful sleigh bells anger her. Those bells torture me, she says. The word is taken up by the bells. Torture me, they ring. Torture me. Torture, torture, torture me. They sing to all possible tunes. It was not so long ago that she had driven this same way, haunted by wolves. She had seen their white teeth in the darkness gleam in their gaping mouths. She had thought that her body would soon be torn to pieces by the wild beasts of the forest. But then she had not been afraid. She had never lived through a more glorious night. Strong and beautiful had the horse been which drew her. Strong and beautiful was the man who had shared the joy of the adventure with her. Ah, this old horse, this old, helpless, trembling companion. She feels so helpless that she longs to cry. She cannot escape from those terrible, irritating bells, so she stops and gets out of the sledge. There must be an end to it all. Why should she run away is as if she were afraid of that wicked, contemptible wretch. At last she sees a horse's head come out of the advancing twilight, and after the head, a whole horse, a whole sledge, and in that sledge sits Sintram himself. She notices, however, that it is not as far as if they had come along the road, this sledge and this horse and their driver, but more as if they had been created just there before their eyes, had come forward out of the twilight as soon as they were made ready. Anna threw the reins to Okira and went to meet Sintram. He stops the horse. Well, well, he said. What a piece of luck is this, dear Miss Saint Jarboric. Let me move my companion over to your sledge. He is going to Berga tonight, and I am in a hurry to get home. Where is your companion? Sintram lifts his blanket and shows Anna a man who is lying asleep in the bottom of the sledge. He's a little drunk, he says. But what does that matter? He will sleep. It's an old acquaintance. Moreover, it is Gosta Berling. Anna shudders. Well, I will tell you, continues Sintram, that she who forsakes the man she loves sells him to the devil, and that was the way I got into his claws. People think they do so well, of course. To renounce is good, and to love is evil. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Asks Anna, quite disturbed. I mean that you should not have let Gosta Berling go from you, Miss Anna. It was God's will. Yes, yes, that's the way it is. To renounce is good, and to love is evil. The good God does not like to see people happy. He sends wolves after them. But if it was not God who did it, Miss Anna, could it not just as well have been I who called my little grey lambs from the Douve mountains to hunt the young man and the young girl? Think it if it was I who sent the wolves because I did not wish to lose one of my own? Think if it was not God who did it. You must not tempt me to doubt that, says Anna in a weak voice, for I am lost. Look here, says Sintram, and bends down over the sleeping Gosta Berling. Look at his little finger. That little sore never heals. He took the blood there when he signed the contract. He is mine. There is a peculiar power in blood. He is mine, and it is only love which can free him. But if I am allowed to keep him, he will be fine. He will be a fine thing. Anna St. Jorik struggles and struggles to shake off the fascination which has seized her. It is all madness, madness. No one can swear away his soul to the odious tempter, but she has no power over her thoughts. The twilight lies so heavy over her, the wood stands so dark and silent, she cannot escape the dreadful terror of the moment. You think, perhaps, continues Sintram, that there is not much left in them to ruin, but don't think that. Has the ground down the peasants? Has he deceived poor friends? Has he cheated at cards? Has he, Miss Anna? Has he been married, a married woman's lover? I think you are the devil himself. Let us exchange. You take Gosta Berling, take him and marry him, keep him, and give them at Berga the money. I yield him unto you, and give you known that is mine. Think that it was not God who sent the wolves after you the other night, and let us exchange. What do you want as compensation? Sintram grinned. What do I want? We're almost there. What do I want? Oh, I am satisfied with little. I only want that old woman there in your sledge, Miss Anna. Satan, tempter, cries Anna, leave me. Shall I betray an old friend who relies on me? Shall I leave her to you, that you may torture her to madness? There, quietly, Miss Anna. Think what you are doing. Here is a fine young man, and there an old, worn-out woman. One of them I must have. Which of them will you let me keep? Anna St. Jorik laughed wildly. Do you think that we can stand here and exchange souls as they exchange horses at markets at Broby? Just so, yes. But if you will, we shall put it on another basis. We shall think of it as an honor of the Saint Jornics. Thereupon he begins to call in a loud voice to his wife, who is sitting in Anna's sledge, and, to the girl's unspeakable horror, she obeys the summons instantly, gets out of the sledge, and comes trembling and shaking to them. See, see, such an obedient wife, says Sintram. You cannot prevent her coming when her husband calls. Now I shall lift Gosta out of my sledge and leave him here. Leave him for good, Miss Anna. Whoever may want to can pick him up. He bends down to lift Gosta up, but Anna leans forward, fixes him with her eyes, and hisses like an angry animal. In God's name, go home. Do you not know who is sitting in the rocking chair in the drawing room and waiting for you? Do you not dare let him wait? It was for Anna almost the climax of the horrors of the day to see how these words affect him. He drags on the reins, turns and drives homeward, urging the horse to gallop with blows and wild cries down the dreadful hill, while the long line of sparks crackle under the runners and hooves in the thin March snow. Anna St. Jarnick and Olkira Dilner stand alone in the road, but they do not say a word. Olkira trembles before Anna's wild eyes, and Anna has nothing to say to the poor old thing. For those whose sake she for whose sake she sacrificed her beloved. She would have liked to have weep, to rave, to roll on the ground, and strew snow and sand on her head. Before she had known the sweetness of renunciation, now she knew its bitterness. What was it to sacrifice her love compared to sacrificing her beloved's soul? They drove on to Berga in the same silence, but when they arrived and the hall door was opened, Anna St. Jorik fainted for the first and only time in her life. There sat both Sintram and Gosta Berling and chatted quietly. The tray with toddy had been brought in, and they had been there at least an hour. Anna St. Jorik fainted, but old Ursula stood calm. She had noticed that everything was not right with him, who had followed them on the road. Afterward, the captain and his wife arranged the matter so, with Sinstrom, that old Ulkira was allowed to stay at Berga. She agreed good-naturedly. He did not want to drive her mad, she said. I do not ask anyone to believe these old stories. They cannot be anything but lies and fiction. But the anguish which passes over the heart until it wails as the floorboards in Sintram's room wailed under the swaying rockers. But the question which ring in the ears as the sleigh bells rang for Anna St. Jorik in the lonely forest. When will they be as lies and fiction? Oh, that they could be. And then we move to England next week. I hope you enjoyed that. Damon Knight, I will look through my messages. I hope I have you on here. I know there are two accounts, by the way. I have a Facebook account which I never use. It's only when I'm banned, and it is one of my paintings of me as the devil. That's not the account to go by. It's the account to go by is what is my picture now? I don't even remember. Let me go here. I'll just get rid of that. Let's see. I need to switch accounts. Oh, yes. So the Facebook account to message me on is that one. So that's the one you want to message me on. That's the one I'm active. A great way to find me, my loves, is to go to thegentlemanpsychic.com. You can find me all over the place. Facebook, YouTube, here, obviously. Anyway, thank you to all of my patrons. I'm sorry I don't announce. I know I've been behind, but things are picking up and hopefully we'll get on the ground. I see Lauren enter the room. Let me just go back and see who is here. Message on the Facebook. Please reply. Should read the Lesser Key of Solomon by Aleister Crowley. Spell book. Sorry, I'm late. My daughter and I have Dante. I'm looking to obtaining a copy of Lesser Key of Solomon. Grimoire books. Thank you for reading. Sprechen Sie kein Deutsch. You look very handsome. Thank you, Casey Magic Girl. The original He Who Must Not Be Named. Hello, girls. Oh, how I hate the Powerpuff Girls. Mr. Lauren Morgan Richards. Lisa, Sam Zog, great story. Very good reading. John Maxwell, my goodness. The jockeying you have to go through to keep moving forward. Sam Zog, thanks for the lovely reading. Great night. You have a full night. Hello. You give Freddie Mercury energy. I used to play Freddie Mercury. With that, my darlings, my darklings, my beauties, thank you for being here. Join me on Wednesday night as we continue. Oh, actually, this Wednesday we won't be doing Movie Witches Coven. We'll be doing it. We're returning next week. So don't join me on Wednesday. Next Friday we'll be having some things, but I'll keep you posted. With that, good night, good morning, good evening, and unpleasant screams. Good night.